Thank you, Jen and Amanda. We are at our last session. How exciting. It's so impressive how many people have come back and stayed, so thank you for that. Two quick announcements before we pass it over for the final speaker. One, the sponsors will be hanging out until 12:30, so if you have a moment and you want to still visit one, please do. And as a group of analysts and scientists, rest assured you will get an evaluation survey after the conference, probably within a day or two. Please do fill it out, share feedback, because of course the conference wants a lot of data to make improvements for next year. So it's my pleasure now to introduce our next introducer, which is Lauren Burke. Lauren is a data scientist at Abercrombie and Fitch, and despite the fact that she looks like she's been in the industry for a few years, Lauren graduated last year?
Yeah.
December. And she's been an integral part of the WIA team, and you'll hear a little about her later from Reagan. But it's my pleasure to pass it off to Lauren to introduce you to our last speaker.
Thank you.
Lauren.
Hi, everyone. So I would like to introduce Kathy Koontz, who actually spoke at the very first Women in Analytics conference that was held at OSU back in 2016. So Kathy currently serves as Executive Director of the Analytics Leadership Consortium at the International Institute for Analytics, which is the leading independent research and advisory firm exclusively focused on helping their clients improve their analytics performance. As Executive Director of ALC, Kathy works with analytics executives from high-performing, data-driven enterprises to further improve their capabilities. With over 20 years of experience in the analytics space, Kathy has developed the strategy, implemented the technology, and leveraged the power of data and analytics to create sustainable and competitive advantage in organizations ranging from Fortune 100 companies to nonprofits. Before joining IIA, Kathy was the practice director of customer journey at Teradata, and prior to that, she served as associate vice president of customer analytics at Nationwide Insurance. At the end of this talk, Kathy will transition to senior vice president of customer complaints analytics and insights at Wells Fargo, where she will be creating an organization and a team that will use data and analytics to help ensure that Wells Fargo values are manifested to each and every customer across channels, across products, and across time. Also, she will be hiring. Please welcome Kathy Koontz.
Well, I just want to say thanks to Lauren and Ruth, Reagan, and all of the WIA volunteers, everybody who's been involved in putting this on. It's been an amazing conference. You know, as Lauren said, I spoke at the first one in the faculty club with about 60 people, and to go from that to this in a manner of 3 years, right? I mean, you look at that WIA logo, that upward-facing line, I mean, that's what the team has done over this time. And so, round of applause. Thank you. And so today I wanted to talk a little bit about analytics maturity and what we've found out about it studying it at IIA over the last 5 years. I'm going to use a little data, and I'm going to tell a few stories as we've learned over the course of this conference. Hopefully give you guys some ideas of how you can affect the analytic maturity at your organization and increase the value that your organization achieves from analytics. And so it's really about helping you leverage the power to be incredible. So to start off, a little bit about me. As you know, I'm currently with IIA for the next 33 minutes and 36 seconds, and then I transition to my new role. Prior to IIA, as you heard, I was with Teradata. I was also with Nationwide. Shout out to my Nationwide peeps. Woo! All right. Yeah, a bunch of folks here I've worked with, folks who've come after. Great environment at Nationwide. I'm really proud to have been there and been part of creating the current analytics culture that exists there. I was at Office Depot prior to that, marketing analyst, in charge of the customer data warehouse and marketing systems, so I've been both in IT and the business side. And when I'm not analyticing, you can see me there with my family doing a restorative yoga and meditation session in New York over Christmas. Bottom right is forging across the river at the top of Glymer Falls in Iceland, about 650 feet up. And the middle one is with my husband, finishing our 100 miles in Pelotonia. He's actually here today, so shout out to my beloved and devoted husband. So what I just want to cover today is talk a little bit about what we've learned at the conference so far, or maybe what I've learned. Define what analytics maturity is. Tell you a little bit about how you measure it. There is a methodology and a science to it. Why analytics maturity matters, and really then what you can do to improve it. And so my conference recap, the first session I went to yesterday was Rebecca Bilbrow's on using visualization in model selection. And I had heard the term heteroskedasticity a number of times. I mean, you don't spend as much time as I have hanging out with data scientists without hearing that. Rebecca actually showed yesterday what it looks like, right? So, top that for knowledge. I found out how cool all the R ladies are. So, R ladies, yep, woo! There you go. If you're into R coding, R ladies is the gang you want to hang out with. And then I found out how the use of Comic Sans font in the announcement of Higgs boson led to a little bit of a career shift for Katie and really trying to use user-centered design in the creation of her data science projects. I think one of the big themes, though, was the discussion on ethics. I mean, that was a thread that was woven through a number of different talks. And I mean, just listening to that, I feel like the talks that I heard, if you're not somewhere between mildly concerned and totally freaked out about ethics in our field, then you're not listening. And the thing is, though, we're the ones who are on the front lines in making sure our organizations and companies do the right thing. And we're the ones who can question, is this right? What are the unintended consequences from this? Are we including the affected populations in our decision-making process, right? And so I think this theme of ethics coming out of this conference and being able to take that back, feeling empowered to ensure that our organizations use this incredible power that we have for good. So, moving on to analytics maturity. International Institute for Analytics has defined 5 stages of maturity. And so you see them here, where it starts with, this definition really makes me a little bit uncomfortable, analytically impaired, right? But it's really companies that are not doing much with analytics. Maybe they're trying, they're starting, they're thinking they need to do it. Stage 2 is localized analytics. Stage 3 are the ones who are analytical aspirations. They're starting to do some things. They see the value of analytics, but there may be organizational, technological, or structural barriers to really achieving pervasive value. Stage 4 are the analytic competitors, right? Where they're good at analytics and they're gaining traction and moving forward. And then stage 5 are really those companies where analytics are embedded into every decision that's made. Whether that decision is made by a human or a machine, analytics is no longer a side function that is done by a different group. It is embedded within the core of those business practices, just the way financial management or HR management is in more traditional companies. Now, IIA does a variety of assessments that measure analytic maturity. And so this bottom level, this analytic skills inventory, measures the individual contributor skills of the folks at the company who are creating analytics, right? Think of this as measuring how robust is the supply of analytics within this organization. The second assessment that's done is this analytic skills and technology assessment, right? And it's really looking more at what I would call the distribution system for analytics, right? The technology that the analytics are created on and deployed upon, and the skills of those folks that are managing that. And then finally, this analytics maturity assessment. And you see how these line up with the capabilities on the right side, where you have the analytics maturity assessment is measuring the maturity of the business stakeholders, the leadership, the culture. Think about that as the demand for analytics within the organization, right? And so too often companies focus on those lower two and don't really focus on the demand aspect of analytics. You see on the right how those pieces need to fit together, right? If there are a significant difference between the individual skills and the analytics capability, or the analytics capability and the maturity of the business stakeholders, it's not going to line up, and you're not going to have an efficient operating environment. I mean, you've heard me talk about supply and demand. It's just like classic economic theory, right? If supply and demand are not at equilibrium, you're going to have a dysfunctional market. And we see that in a lot of organizations that are trying to really move from into stage 2 and through stage 2 in the analytics maturity. Many companies think we'll buy the technology stack that our technology research partner tells us we should buy. We'll set up an analytics org and hire the number of data scientists that our general management consulting company says we should hire. And we're an analytics competitor, right? Not so much. I'm sure many of us have lived that, right? Where you have all this analytics capability, but the business stakeholders don't know how to use it, right? I mean, that was a lot of Kathleen Maley's talk, right? Just give me some data, right? Rather than saying, I have a business imperative, and I feel like analytics can help me be more successful at achieving that. And so what are some of the, frameworks that we use to measure this analytic maturity? So this Delta framework was created by Tom Davenport, who was one of the founders of IIA, in his 2007 book, Competing on Analytics, and expanded in his 2017 edition. And when we do an analytics maturity assessment, we look across an organization at their data and how good are they at capturing it, at integrating it, at the organization's sense of trustworthiness of that data. How well managed is the technology? Is it managed at an enterprise level? How's the talent organized? What's the data scalability? How consistent is the external reporting? What's the leadership like? How much strategic input is analytics into leadership decisions, the executive advocacy, and then the utilization of those data and analytics at multiple levels of the leadership line? Are analytics integrated into the targets that the organization uses around predictive modeling, goal setting, prioritization, experimentation, and then how many analysts do they have? Is it appropriate for their industry, for their maturity level, for their goals? Do they have defined career paths? What are their data science skills like? And so these are some of the components that get measured within the analytics maturity assessment. And if you go to the IIA website, iianalytics.com, you can, on the right, take an estimator of your company's analytics maturity and get some feedback on your analytics maturity and how that compares. And once you do that, you can download this research brief you see, the Delta Plus Primer that's displayed here. And one of my favorite parts of that primer is this table you see in the middle. And what that is, it shows the Delta components split out at each of the 5 levels of analytics maturity, right? So you can look at, a level 2 company manages its data this way. A level 4 company looks at targets this way, and it can really help you identify not just where you are, but some changes that you need to make to advance your organization's maturity. Now, of course, when our clients do the paid AMA assessment, they get a much deeper dive, lots of cuts of the data with recommendations of how to move through the different stages and recommendations of where they can lean in to advance their organization's maturity. But this free estimator and this primer is a great way to get started at your company. And so what have we learned by doing these estimates over the years and paid engagements to measure analytics maturity? Well, our estimate based on our data of, I think about 200 plus companies is really most companies are stuck in stage 2. And that's localized analytics. I've been at companies, I've consulted with companies, and it reflects my anecdotal experience as well, that you will find that there are pockets of analytics. Some groups really have it figured out, and functional areas trust them, and they're building predictive models that are integrated into business processes and creating really great data science products that are just consumed and drive decisions, but it's within one functional area or within one LOB. What we've seen with our assessment cohort that is now over 80 companies is, the lowest score we've done is a 1.25, and the highest is a 3.72. You can see the median there. And then we've also benchmarked market leaders, and we've done over 140 of these. And you see the disparity there where the market leaders are out ahead. Well, that would make sense. The people who come to us looking for help in increasing their analytics maturity are usually the ones who realize they need to move forward. But the one thing, I'll point out is, the highest score is 4.94, even in the market leaders. The highest score our assessment gives is a 5.99. And part of that is because companies that are good at analytics, once they get there, they realize how much more they can do, right? They realize how much further they can take analytics as they start moving into that stage 4 and 5. And so these are some of the companies that we've done our market leaders study with. And you can see, Amazon, Visa, Disney, companies that you may think of as analytic competitors, and you may think of them as laggards, but are the leaders within their industries. And so, what have we learned from that? Well, I'll leave this slide up for you to look and find your industry. As you can see, digital natives, are not at 599, again, because even though they have an environment that's optimally designed to leverage analytics, they know they have a lot further that they can go. And then down at the bottom, healthcare providers. And so you can see the disparity there within these. One thing I'll tell you, it's interesting to think about, though, the industry rankings, is we see a number of our clients who, especially in those industries that are lower maturity, there's a large health system that's located in the Midwest that's one of our clients, and they said, we don't want to stop at a 2.25. We don't want to be at the top of our industry. We don't want to be the tall, short person. We want to get up into the mid 3s and pushing up to 4. That's their aspiration. And so they are working diligently toward enhancing their analytics maturity so that the organization can realize greater value from their analytic investment. And so, I think companies that are committed to analytics are not going to be satisfied in being the best at one of these lagging industries. We don't compare our experiences. We don't compare the value that we receive, within that industry. We go to a hospital and we get frustrated with their registration system, and we know how much more efficient it can be in other industries. And so our expectations as humans interacting within those industries and systems, we don't segment them by industry, right? And so that's what this healthcare provider has realized, and they're really pushing to move up toward that digital native level. Now, there's also disparity within industries, and so you can see here across the different industries how broad those spans are, right? You see Amazon at 4.94. Some of these ratings are based on surveys within the organization and how they rate themselves. And so, you know, Amazon was like, we're really good, but we know we can be better. And so, you know, you see how clustered some are and how widespread some are, but it just shows that even the clustered one has pretty low analytic maturity. That's utilities and telecom. They're just really starting to feel this competitive pressure because of some entrants into their industry to start leveraging analytics. And so they're also working to enhance their analytic maturity. And so what I like to ask is, raise your hand if you are at an organization where you are totally happy with the technology and tools you have to create your data science products. Your partners know exactly what to do with them when you bring them forward, and you have all the training and skills and support from management that you need, and you're completely satisfied. Okay, good. Then I'll go on, because this was kind of choose your own adventure, because if everybody had raised their hand, I would have just stopped and called it early. So really, you know, what can you do as an individual, right? One person, even if you're a leader of a team of 200, right? What can you do to try and move your organization up that analytic curve? I mean, we're pivoting from the safe confines of the Women in Analytics Conference and all the learning we've done and all the great people we've met, and now we've got to pivot back to our reality, either this afternoon or hopefully Monday morning for most folks. And so what I want to do is share a story, you know, about how to shake things up, right? You have to be willing to shake things up, but you have to do it in a productive way, right? You can't just be that naysayer, frustrated, you know, angry person. How do you go about it in a way that is actually going to help? And so as I was pondering this, I listened to this podcast from Adam Grant, and his podcast is Work Life. The tagline is, How to Make Work Not Suck. I thought that was awesome, you know, and he's an organizational psychologist at Harvard. And so this episode was called Shakeups, the Value of Outsiders in Your Workplace. And I thought, what a great topic for women in analytics, because I'm sure we've all felt like outsiders in our workplace, right? You know, people don't understand what we do. Maybe we're this new function that was brought in to bring in this magical analytics to help the organization. You know, that outsider thing really resonated with me. And so Adam told the story of from CG Animation and how Pixar was really doing well with their movies, but they brought in an outsider, Brad Bird, to do The Incredibles. And they challenged him to do something that had never been done before, and that's use humans as the main characters in a CG full-feature animation movie. You know, it was really hard to animate humans so you could relate to them as human, and one of the particular challenges was around the hair. And anybody who's seen The Incredibles knows that Violet, her hair has its own story arc through there. And so to do The Incredibles, they had to solve this combination of creative and technical challenge. And I think many of us get put into those positions where we have to solve that combination of a creative business challenge and apply technology and data and analytics and science to that. And so, you know, what did he do, right? Well, first of all, as the podcast indicates, he assembled a team of misfits. People who didn't believe the norms, that the stories that were told in the company of what was possible and what could be done. They were frustrated because they believed there was a better way, and they were the ones to do it. He noted a study that was looking at an organization that was trying to improve and evolve, and it's found that the best, most creative ideas were brought forward by those who felt dissatisfied because they were motivated to develop fresh ideas, right? I hope that resonates with a lot of you. I know many teams I've worked with have felt that way within analytics. And I loved one of the quotes from somebody at Pixar that said, "Innovation is the pirate ship that sails into the yacht club." And we oftentimes are those innovators, right? We're the pirates. We're a little separate. We're not, we're brought in to shake things up. Generally, oftentimes, there may be business partners who are complacent, who think that the performance they're achieving right now is good enough. And we're the ones who come in and say, there's a better way, and I've found it in the data. The second thing he did is he co-located the engineers and the creatives, and they talked about it like this was like just crazy town idea of bringing together CG engineers and the animators. But what he said is that there were emails flying back and forth that the technology's not working, this is terrible, by the creatives, and the engineers were like, well, you didn't hit function F7/ all these codes to go in, otherwise it would have worked. I mean, not like any of us have ever heard that, right? And so he said, I want to bring them together. He said, because the emails oftentimes were too filtered, too controlled, or you lost the context. And he said there would be 20 people who were saying, here's the way you do it. And there might be one who would say, well, you don't have to do it that way. And he wanted to have that iteration and that cooperation across the teams. And he said he was able to create magic by bringing the different teams together. And they were, he talked about this beforehand, like one of the animators would be in there trying to work with the hair, and like all of a sudden it's just flying off of her head, like flying around the room, and just trying to create the flowing, moving hair that's a big part of this movie. The flowing, moving fabric was a real technological breakthrough. And then finally, go for the BHAG, right? The big, hairy, audacious goal. He challenged them to do something that had never been done before, right? And the doubters, the people who didn't believe they could do it, became their enemy. Research shows that when there's an uphill battle, people are most excited to fight that, right? And so by creating this external force of doubters, he was able to rally the team and just have them believe that they could do it and achieve something that the psychologists call a just manageable difficulty. And this is something that's just beyond your current reach, that challenges and tests and stretches your skills to the edge of what you believe is possible. And I would say that, several years ago at Nationwide, we linked the evolution of Nationwide's data and analytic capabilities to a newly articulated strategy of customer centricity. And we went about improving the customer data and creating an analytic culture and improving analytics there. And that was how we advanced the culture, by linking it to this BHAG, by saying you can't get there without data and analytics. And just like Brad Bird, we proved the doubters wrong. And so finally, as we pivot and look to take the information that we've gained over this last day and a half and go back to our workplaces and apply it, just keep in mind these lessons from Pixar and Brad Bird about how to be incredible. Leverage the power of misfits. Find those like-minded misfits and band together and encourage one another. Bring the crew together. Look for that cross-functional team. So many organizations are trying to do agile in data and analytics, and they feel like they've got to go through the whole training and get all the Scrum Masters and all the agile overhead. If you have a product owner who's engaged in making decisions on your data science product, if you have a data scientist and a data engineer and somebody who's going to be deploying this product into your marketplace, and you iterate through that looking for a minimum viable product and improve that over time, you're doing agile, right? Bring the crew together so you can do that, whether it's official or it's just the way that you work across your team. And then finally, go for the BHAG, right? Find that big, hairy, audacious goal that you and your misfits and your crew can rally around. Head back and be incredible. And at this point, what I wanted to do was wrap up the conference by getting some advice from some of our previous speakers and experts. And so I'm going to invite Kathleen Maley, Ursula Cottone, and Lauren Burke to join me on the stage and just share their perspective a little bit coming to the close of the conference. And I really liked this collection of folks. Thanks. We're going to do a selfie at the end with everybody.
Okay.
Ursula brought my phone up to me. But if you think about it, Ursula, Chief Data Officer at Huntington, her role is really around analytics enablement. Lauren, at Abercrombie is an analytics practitioner, right, leading a group there. And then Kathleen at KeyBank, another analytics leader who just gave us a great session on how to manage expectations and communicate with business partners. And so I wanted each of them to share, one thing that they've learned either at the conference or in their experience that they feel like an individual can use to help their organization improve their analytics maturity. So, Ursula, why don't you go first?
So I think it has the most to do with getting out and meeting people. So if you have the opportunity to meet your business partners, if you have not, go introduce yourself. Getting to learn the people that need your work is probably the most important thing. For me, the more time you spend with people who have problems, like Kathy talked about earlier, and start to learn what matters to them, why it's important, why their job and what they do is so important to the company, you're going to get so much information from them, not just about how you can help solve problems for them into the future, but a different point of view from where they're sitting in the company. That networking is invaluable for any job you will ever have, getting to know people and what matters to them. So if I were to give you one really important takeaway is leave this room and schedule a coffee with somebody you don't know. I've never been anywhere where they said, no, thank you, I don't want to talk to you. You're part of the company, for Pete's sakes. And I don't think it matters, woman, man, it's completely irrelevant. Level of the company, go reach out to somebody you have not met and start to learn a little bit more about them and what's important to them within the company.
Awesome. Yeah, great advice. I mean, to Kathleen's talk about getting to know people, context, hearing the problems people are trying to solve, and just creating that introduction that's the foundation for that trust that has to develop over time. Great idea. Lauren, what do you think?
Sure. So I often find that it is difficult to convince people to consider data over opinion, which is something that can happen in any organization of any size. And as a data science practitioner, I find that it's easiest to convince fellow data scientists and analysts. So to me, a good sign of maturity is when the business is open to accepting and considering the insights that are coming from our data. This allows us to begin to collaborate and communicate with the business in a way that promotes analytics in the context of who it is for. And another thing is I build predictive models that give businesses foresight. So something that often comes up is that we are more likely to respect insight that agrees with our prior beliefs and assumptions. So actively trying to overcome and confront our tendency to dismiss information that we don't agree with is something that I believe is a good first step in moving forward in a meaningful and sustainable way.
Yeah. Well, and I think, to Ursula's point, if you know that person, right? If you've met them before, if you've met them before that, bringing something that challenges their biases and their historical actions, right? It's a little bit less threatening, right? So kind of meet folks, lay that groundwork, knowing that at some point in the future you may have to sit across from them and deliver a message that has data that challenges how they see their world. And if you've already made that introduction, it's a little bit less threatening. Kathleen, what do you think?
I'm going to reference two of my favorite talks that I heard while I was here. The first was around user-centric design, because I think it was actually quite complementary to what I came here to talk about, that I have to keep in mind the person or the purpose for whom I am doing this work. It is not for the work itself. It is for what we are trying to achieve. And so how do I make that consumable in some way, and always really focusing on the outcome and my intention for the outcome. But the other thing that really struck me was the conversation on ethics in algorithms. And I work for a bank. So the first thing that I think about is lending. And we're lending to people. And our lending decision will impact that individual's life. And that is an awesome responsibility. Well, I have absolutely no question that we meet all of our legal and regulatory obligations. It is my obligation, my personal obligation, to think beyond the legal and regulatory requirements. Do I feel good about the decisions that we're making, about how we are influencing people's lives, and what are the different questions I may want to ask myself that I may want to our risk partners to help me consider? I think that's really important.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think the discussion of ethics and our role in that is going to continue and get stronger. I would recommend DJ Patil published a book maybe over the summer. It's a quick read, pretty short. It's available for free on a number of different sites. If you just Google DJ Patil and ethics, it's got some really great ideas, not just talking about the problem, but some approaches that you can take to better manage it. And I think that's a great start. And with that, I would like to thank my panel for joining me. We're going to grab a selfie and then turn it back over to Reagan to close things out. I want to thank everybody for a great conference, listening to me for the last 30 minutes, and my panelists for joining me. So thank you all.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you so much, Kathy, for wrapping that up for us on day 2, and all the panelists as well. I have a decent amount of thank yous, so bear with me during it, because a lot goes into putting something on like this. But before I do that, just one quick reminder. If you did sign up for the workshop, it does start at noon. Lunch is provided, so we'll start with lunch, then we'll move into the workshop that is downstairs in the AWH room, so the one with the classroom-style setup. So first, I would like to thank the Tech Community Coalition, which helps this whole organization be possible and up and running. So Warner, if you're still here, thank you so much for all the work that you do. I would also really like to thank Articulation, who was our speaking coaches for all of our speakers this year. Ruth and her team are absolutely incredible. They put a lot of time into helping our coaches prep for this conference. Also, Ruth, thank you so much again for being the MC for 2 days. I know a lot of prep time went into that as well. I'd also like to thank the International Institute for Analytics for being an in-kind sponsor for us, so thank you guys so much for that as well.
Big shout out to Ashley, our event planner, if you're in the room. Thank you so much, Ashley, for everything that you've done. And Beth in the back, our production manager, is incredible, so thank you so much, Beth. If you like the stage, thank you, Mills James, because they did an incredible job. So thank you guys so much for putting on this production for us. Also, thank you to the Convention Center. Obviously, the space that we're in right now, you guys have been incredible. If you like the furniture, we got that from Event Source. So if you're looking for furniture for any of your events, they're really, really great to work with. So check them out. And I'd also like to do one more thank you to our sponsors. If we could do just one more round of applause for our sponsors. Thank you so much. We have really, really good companies that participate every year. They're really engaged with our attendees, so thank you again for all the time and energy you put into preparing for the conference. They really help, and they're dedicated towards pushing women towards leadership positions, so thank you. I appreciate you supporting this community. Also, I'd like to thank the wonderful audience that we had today. You guys were fantastic. Thank you for participating in the conference this year. And then I'd like to do one more thank you for the WIA team. So I know we're kind of scattered about making sure everything is happening and moving smoothly. So if you're from the WIA team, please stand real quick. There might be no one in the room. There's some backstage. So thank you guys so much. And I'd like to do just one more thing before we leave for today. I'd like to bring Lauren Burke back on stage. So Lauren is actually going to be joining us next year in a leadership position for WIA. She's been a huge, huge part to the success of the conference this year. So everyone, let's thank Lauren. Thank you. And with that, I would like to thank you for coming to the 3rd annual Women in Analytics Conference, and we hope to see you all next year. Thanks so much.